Episode number 329, Flashlights and Pocket Knives. This is going to be a good one. So the reason I wanted to share this story is I live in this really amazing place, really, really beautiful, very rural. You know, even though most people think of us as being a Seattle show or Seattle podcast, the reality is that I live a little bit west of Seattle in an area that's much more rural. As many of you know, one of my favorite hobbies is to go out jogging. Well, I was out jogging recently, and there's this area that I jog through that's very wooded and very dark, very wild. And one morning as I was jogging at dark 30, probably about 4:30 in the morning, I run by this one stretch of woods, and all of a sudden, as I've got my flashlight on, I start hearing this something rumbling through the woods. It's like I woke something up, and it was in the woods right next to the road. And so I'm like, what in the world is going on? So I'm sitting there with my flashlight, shining it all around, and there's no houses anywhere near. So I take off running really fast. I'm like, I got to get to a neighborhood and get away from whatever this noise is, whatever this big thing is that's in the woods. That night when I got home from work, I had let my dog out. It's probably about 9 o'clock that night. And all of a sudden, my little dog, he's about the size of my foot. He starts barking his head off. I'm like, what is going on? So I go out in the backyard, and sure enough, we have a great big black bear that is visiting the garbage can. At least he's trying to get to the garbage can. And I thought to myself, well, I'll bet you that's who I heard rumbling around in the woods this morning as I went running by. And it's so funny. My dog, he's just this little guy, but he is bold and he is brave, and he is letting this bear know what he thinks about him being there. A couple minutes later, my son comes out carrying his pellet gun saying, "What's going on, Dad?" He's going to take care of business. We're going to have a little bear stew, apparently. But the next morning, I get up, dark 30, and I'm ready to go for a jog, and I've got my flashlight, and I start thinking about that bear down in the woods there, and I started thinking, well, I don't know if a flashlight's going to be enough. So I went back in the house, and I grabbed my pocket knife, and I thought, yeah, this is good. And so I'm running and get down to the bottom of the driveway, and I kind of have that Davy Crockett song playing through my head. How does it go? Davy Crockett. Something like killed him a bear when he was only 3 or something. So I was thinking to myself, man, I'm going to take this bear out. I've got my little pocket knife and my flashlight. This guy comes after me and tries to eat me for breakfast. I'm at least going to put a scratch in him. So what in the world? Anyways, but what's the point? Jason, you're out here running, and a couple things that I had these aha moments about. Number one is I'm okay going out in a bear attack. I don't know about you, but I don't care if it's a bear attack or a shark attack or getting hit by lightning, anything in my mind as I think about the end. They always say if you want to have a good plan, you got to start with the end in mind. And as far as I'm concerned, a bear attack out jogging would just be a really cool way to leave a legacy. I'm okay with that. And I think it's better than, spending the last 6 months in a hospital bed. I'll take the bear attack any day of the week. What was really funny about this idea of having a pocket knife is that obviously a pocket knife is not going to do much good if that bear decides he wants to take me out. But what the pocket knife did and what the flashlight did was it gave me enough confidence to be able to continue doing my morning jog. And sometimes confidence is the deal maker. Just a little bit of confidence can really go a long way. But there were two big ahas that I had as I was thinking about this experience and thinking about how ridiculous it was that having a pocket knife and a flashlight would make me feel that much more confident knowing that there's this bear lurking in the woods. So the first thing I realized that financial planning is kind of like having a flashlight. It shines a light in the darkness. It illuminates risks. It helps you identify risks before something bad happens so that you know what the implications will be if that bad thing does happen. The key word in this is planning. Notice there's a difference between having a plan and planning. A plan is one and done. Planning means you set your course but make course corrections when necessary. Planning is an ongoing action. The Bible says plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. We make our plans in pencil but the future will likely look different than the way that we currently imagine them. So it's just important that we have not only a plan, but that we're continuing to do planning. So what does it really mean to have a retirement plan? Well, you want to understand your spending now and in the future. You're going to want to make any necessary adjustments for the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. You're going to need to account for inflation. You'll want to maximize Social Security and pension income, make assumptions about life expectancy, increase medical expenses at a rate greater than overall inflation. You're going to want to be sure to take taxes into consideration. To be prudent, you're probably going to want to assume a low rate of return on your investments. And then you're going to want to stress test your plan for the death of one spouse, Social Security income decreasing at some point in the future, a long-term care event, a bad sequence of returns in the stock market, and any other misfortune that you could imagine. So the second part to this is the pocket knife. The pocket knife is having cash reserves. Now, in reality, if the entire economic system fails, having 3 months, 6 months, even 12 months of cash on hand, it may buy you a little bit of time, but it's not going to help you in a situation if we have a declining market for 30 years like Japan has experienced with the Nikkei 225. But having cash on hand can help you avoid the mistake of making emotional decisions in the height of bad news. Carrying a pocket knife can give you the confidence to continue your morning jog, and having cash on hand allows you to weather the short-term financial storms that we are all subject to. We all experience it when the market tanks 35% in March due to the COVID sell-off. Well, unless you're sitting in cash, you're experiencing those declines. And let me tell you, cash is not a safe place. Some of you think sitting in cash is safe. It may be safe for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, but the reality is if you're sitting and if you have too much money in cash and you stay there for too long, inflation's going to eat your lunch. So you got to be really careful there. Now, we talk about the worst case possible scenario. You could look at Japan and say, okay, back in 1989, the Nikkei 225 closed at 38,915. Today, it's at like 23,695. So 31 years later, it's not even back to even. The Nikkei 225 is kind of like Japan's Dow Jones Industrial Average. It represents the biggest companies in their economy. So is it possible that we could have an asset bubble that's due to debt that sinks and it takes 31 years and not even recover yet? Well, sure, it's possible. But the reality is we're all going to be in the same boat if that happens. And so we're given a choice right now about where our money's going to go to work for us. We can put it in cash and not earn anything, but experience the safety of knowing that we're going to be okay in the short term. We can put it in stocks and invest in companies that are making our lives better. We can invest in bonds, which is debt. We're buying the debt of companies or governments, and that debt doesn't pay us very much money right now, and it has risks associated with it. We could buy commodities, and unfortunately, as many of you know, I'm not a huge fan of this idea of loading up on gold. You can really get radical and go out and buy something like Bitcoin, which I don't know, as it comes to a store of value, how valuable Bitcoin is, because the price just fluctuates all over the place, as you guys are well aware. The bottom line is, how much cash is enough? Well, for most people, I'd say in terms of your emergency fund, if you have 3 months or 6 months of essential expenses, well, that's plenty of emergency funds. When I'm talking about emergency funds, I'm talking about money you keep in the bank that is for the sole purpose of the car's going to go out, the roof is going to leak, the kids are going to need bailed out, and we're going to want cash on hand, and we're not going to want to be in a position where we have to sell anything. So if you can have 3 to 6 months cash on hand in an emergency fund in the bank, that's good. Now, when it comes to bucketing, creating different time segments of your money, well, in that case, if you could have 3, 4, ideally in a perfect world, 5 years, if you've saved enough where we could have 5 years to help supplement your cash flow those first 5 years of retirement. Because remember, the whole idea with a bucket strategy is we're just trying to put you in a position where we're not having to pull money out of accounts that are falling in value. We want to give our at-risk money time to recover from a market sell-off. This whole thing about risk is really individual. It's really up to you.